A light drizzle painted the streets of Manhattan with reflections of yellow taxi lights and neon glows. Benjamin Harrington, the city's most sought-after billionaire, stared out the window of his penthouse office. His eyes fixed on the horizon betrayed a growing restlessness. At 35, he had an incalculable fortune and a booming corporate empire. But at that moment, none of it mattered. The clock was ticking. To receive his grandmother's inheritance and save the family business from imminent collapse, Benjamin needed to meet a ridiculous clause in her will. He had to get married within 6 months. Not for love, of course, just a marriage, and fast. While Benjamin contemplated the absurdity of his situation, Chloe Meadows settled into the chair of her small community library in the quiet town of Brookhaven, hours away from Manhattan. At 28, Chloe led a simple life far from the spotlight. Her world consisted of dusty shelves, tales of heroes, and children attending her reading lessons. She wasn't considered conventionally attractive, something she had heard all her life. Her face bore uneven features, and acne scars from her teenage years lingered. Yet her eyes shone with a warmth few noticed. Chloe lived with little but loved her peaceful routine. The problem was her library was on the brink of closure, and she had no idea how to prevent the inevitable. Their paths crossed thanks to an unlikely intermediary. Benjamin's lawyer, Henry Daniels, a pragmatic and shrewd man who saw solutions where no one else did. After extensive research, he found Chloe, a woman with no romantic ties and a financial need Benjamin could easily solve. The deal was simple. Chloe would agree to marry Benjamin in exchange for a generous compensation, enough to save her library and provide years of stability. She hesitated, but desperation won. It was a marriage of convenience. No love, no intimacy, no promises. Just a contract. Benjamin and Chloe met for the first time at a discreet cafe. He entered confidently, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that radiated authority. She was nervous, fidgeting with the sleeves of her worn cardigan. When Benjamin saw her, his expression remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. He had expected someone ordinary, but Chloe seemed out of place, almost invisible in the setting. Her voice trembled as she answered his direct questions, but rather than intimidated, she seemed resigned. Benjamin appreciated her honesty. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. For him, that was a relief. On the wedding day, only one witness from each side was present. It was a quick, cold event devoid of emotion. The glimmer in Chloe's eyes wasn't joy but determination. She repeated to herself that this was a sacrifice for something greater than herself. Benjamin, on the other hand, treated it like just another business transaction. His expression unchanged as he placed the ring on her finger. Chloe felt the weight of the cold metal like a shackle. She was now officially Mrs. Harrington, but it meant little to either of them. After the ceremony, Benjamin was blunt. "You'll get your money, and I'll get my inheritance. Don't expect anything beyond that." His words were sharp, but Chloe simply nodded. She knew what she was getting into. Yet, as they got into the same car to return to the apartment they would now share, a strange tension hung in the air. Benjamin avoided looking at her, but Chloe, curled up on the leather seat, quietly observed the man who had just become her husband. He seemed as distant as he was unreachable. Arriving at the apartment was a turning point for Chloe. The place was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. She had never seen anything like it, but despite the grandeur, the space felt cold, just like Benjamin. He showed her the room that would be hers on the opposite end of his and disappeared into his office without another word. Chloe felt the loneliness hit her hard. She was just a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. In the days that followed, Chloe tried to adapt. She spent hours exploring the apartment, which felt more like a museum than a home. Benjamin was rarely around, consumed by meetings and business dinners. When they did cross paths, their interactions were brief, almost formal. Chloe began to question if she had made the right choice. But whenever she thought about the library and the children who depended on it, she reminded herself that this sacrifice had a purpose. One day, Chloe stumbled upon something that caught her attention: an old photograph of an elegant woman on a discreet shelf in Benjamin's office. Curious, she asked Henry about it. "That's his grandmother," the lawyer replied with a wistful smile. She was the heart of the Harrington family. Benjamin was very close to her. The mention of his grandmother brought a new layer of understanding to Chloe. Maybe there was more to Benjamin's coldness, something she hadn't yet grasped. What Chloe didn't realize was that she was also beginning to affect Benjamin. He watched her from a distance, noticing the small details, how she organized books no one read or the shy way she smiled at the staff. Something about her defied Benjamin's logic, and it unsettled him. The marriage had started as a contract, but without either of them realizing it, a fragile thread of humanity was beginning to weave between them. Mornings at the Harrington apartment were silent, almost unsettling. Chloe had grown accustomed to eating breakfast alone, sitting at the marble table that seemed to hold more stories than her entire life. The vast, luxurious space felt like it swallowed her presence. Benjamin was a shadow in his own home, leaving early and returning late, his face always masked by an impassive expression. Yet, beneath that cold exterior, something in him was beginning to shift. He caught himself noticing Chloe in fleeting moments, the way she tied her hair, her muffled laughter when reading something amusing, and her surprisingly graceful simplicity. While Benjamin avoided direct contact, Chloe began exploring her new reality with cautious curiosity. She was invisible to most guests at the occasional business parties Benjamin hosted. They either dismissed her with disdain or ignored her entirely, seeing her as an inconsequential weight in the billionaire's life. These nights were torturous for Chloe, but she endured. She had learned to mask her vulnerability with resilience. At one such party, Alexis Linton, a socialite and Benjamin's former fiancé, made a point to confront Chloe. "I thought Benjamin might fall, but I never imagined he'd stoop to this," Alexis said with a venomous smile, her eyes dissecting Chloe as if she were a circus curiosity. Before Chloe could respond, Benjamin appeared. "Chloe is my wife and Mrs. Harrington. That's all you need to know." He took her by the arm and led her away. The gesture, though protective, felt cold and calculated. Chloe, hurt, realized he wasn't truly defending her, but merely avoiding a public scandal. Yet, the night brought something unexpected. After the party, Chloe found Benjamin sitting on the balcony, something he never did. She watched him in silence, intrigued by his distant expression. "You don't need to care about what they say about you," he murmured, as though trying to comfort her. Chloe hesitated before replying, "I don't care what they say about me. I just wish you didn't care either." Benjamin stayed silent, but Chloe's sincerity disarmed him in a way he didn't fully understand. In the meantime, Chloe sought purpose in a life that felt so empty. During one of her walks through the neighborhood, she discovered a small community center offering classes for children. Volunteering to teach literature, Chloe found herself feeling alive for the first time in weeks. When Benjamin learned about it, he was intrigued. He hadn't expected his contracted wife to engage in something so altruistic. Unbeknownst to her, He began investigating her past, asking Henry discreetly about her life. Through this, Benjamin uncovered fragments of what made Chloe so unique. She had grown up in a modest family, facing prejudice for her appearance from an early age. But instead of withdrawing, she found solace and inspiration in books. She's always believed books could save lives, Henry explained. Benjamin couldn't comprehend this logic, yet Chloe's unwavering determination fascinated him. Chloe, too, began noticing nuances in Benjamin. Beneath his polished exterior and controlling demeanor, there was something broken about him. One night, while he was on an important call, she spotted the same framed photo of his grandmother she had seen before. She decided to ask directly, "She was important to you, wasn't she?" Caught off guard, Benjamin replied curtly, "More than you could imagine." But for a brief moment, his eyes revealed something Chloe hadn't seen before: longing. Their relationship remained distant, but small interactions started to chip away at the wall between them. One day, without meaning to, Chloe left a note in Benjamin's office with a quote from a book she had been reading. Asterisk, "It's not the thorns that make the rose ugly, but the eyes that look at it without wanting to see." Asterisk. Benjamin found the note and was intrigued. He couldn't decide if it was a provocation or an attempt at connection. Shortly after, Benjamin began altering his routines. He started coming home earlier, though he never said anything directly. He observed Chloe as she read on the couch, surrounded by piles of books. One evening, the tension in the air was palpable. "You're different from what I imagined," he said abruptly. Chloe looked at him, puzzled. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" Benjamin hesitated before responding. "I'm still trying to figure that out." Despite the progress, a shadow hung over them. Chloe sensed Benjamin was hiding something deeper than just the pain of losing his grandmother. She discovered a locked safe in his office and, though she knew it was wrong, couldn't help but wonder what he kept inside. Documents, business secrets, or something more personal. Chloe was on the verge of uncovering that Benjamin Harrington was far more complex than she had ever imagined. Let's play a game for those who only read the comments. Type library in the comments so we know who made it this far. Now, let's get back to the story while we keep an eye on the comments. The Harrington apartment began to feel less oppressive to Chloe. She now spent part of her days at the community center, teaching literature to underprivileged children. Her life was slowly regaining color, though she still felt like an outsider in Benjamin's world. Meanwhile, Benjamin found himself watching her from a distance, intrigued by the quiet changes she brought to the spaces around her. Chloe had a way of transforming things, even if she didn't realize it. One afternoon, as she organized books at the community library, a young girl named Lily approached her, visibly eager for attention. "You read so beautifully. Can you teach me to write stories, too?" The question struck a deep chord in Chloe, reminding her of her own childhood when books had been her only escape. She couldn't help but smile. "Of course, Lily. Let's create something together." The moment seemed small but represented a genuine, pure connection, something Chloe hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Benjamin was dealing with a torrent of problems at work. He discovered that one of his most important projects was at risk of collapsing due to internal betrayals. To make matters worse, his ex-fiancée, Alexis, resurfaced in his life, claiming regret and offering help in exchange for reconciliation. Benjamin dismissed the idea immediately, but Alexis, persistent as ever, suggested that Chloe would never be enough for him. "You're Benjamin Harrington. You need someone who matches you, not her." Though Benjamin didn't respond, Alexis's words bothered him more than they should have. That night, Benjamin returned home earlier than usual and found Chloe organizing a pile of books in the living room. Her hair was messily tied up, and her eyes glimmered with a sense of accomplishment he didn't recognize. "Are those your books?" he asked, pointing to the worn covers. Chloe hesitated before answering. "They belong to the kids at the community center. They need stories, even borrowed ones." Benjamin remained silent, impressed but unsure how to express it. The following days brought unexpected interactions. Benjamin began offering Chloe rides to the community center. During one of these drives, he casually asked, "Why do you care so much about this?" "It's not your responsibility." Surprised, Chloe responded simply, "Books saved me when I felt like the world had no place for me. I think they can do the same for others." Benjamin, touched, felt a pang of guilt. The marriage he had once seen as a mere transaction now seemed much more complex. Still, not every moment brought them closer. One evening, during dinner, Chloe confronted Benjamin about his cold demeanor. "Why are you so distrustful? It's like you're always expecting the worst from people." He stood abruptly, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe because I have reasons to," he replied before leaving the table. Chloe didn't press further, but the exchange made it clear that Benjamin harbored deep wounds he wasn't ready to reveal. Despite the tensions, Benjamin began making subtle changes to his routine, as if trying, in his own way, to bridge the gap between them. He started paying closer attention to her work at the community center and even made a significant anonymous donation to the organization. When Chloe found out, she was surprised but also suspicious. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "They needed it," was all Benjamin said, though the truth was he wanted to support something that mattered to her. The suspense in their story deepened as Chloe remained curious about the locked safe in Benjamin's office. One afternoon, while he was out, she found herself standing in front of it, contemplating whether or not to try opening it. Her fingers brushed the keypad, but before she could do anything, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Quickly stepping away, her heart raced as Benjamin entered the office. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Chloe stammered a response, but Benjamin only narrowed his eyes. Later that evening, Benjamin unexpectedly addressed the subject of the safe, albeit indirectly. Finding Chloe in the kitchen with a cup of tea, he said, "There are things I prefer to keep buried, not because they're terrible, but because they remind me of who I used to be." Instead of pressing him, Chloe simply nodded. "Sometimes holding on to the past can stop us from moving forward," she said softly. Benjamin didn't respond, but her words echoed in his mind. By the end of that week, a pivotal moment marked a significant shift. Benjamin went to the community center to pick up Chloe and witnessed how beloved she was by the children. One of them ran up to him and innocently asked, "Are you Chloe's husband?" "She's amazing." Benjamin was at a loss for words, but in that moment, he realized something he could no longer ignore. Chloe wasn't just an ordinary woman, as he had once thought. She was extraordinary, and he was beginning to understand how much she was changing his life, whether he wanted her to or not. The community center was filled with the laughter and chatter of children, but Chloe couldn't focus that afternoon. Her mind was consumed by Benjamin's words the previous night. He seemed weighed down by a past he refused to share, and it unsettled her. There was something deeply human behind his cold and calculated facade, but Benjamin kept his barriers firmly in place. As she tried to teach the children how to write short stories, her own life felt increasingly chaotic and uncertain. Meanwhile, Benjamin was fighting a battle on a different front. A leak of confidential information within his company threatened one of the most important contracts of his career. He suspected betrayal from someone close, perhaps within the circle of executives he considered trustworthy. The tension was wearing on his patience, and each day became a struggle to maintain control. The marriage to Chloe, which he had once seen as a convenient solution, now felt like a reminder of how he had further complicated his life. When Chloe returned home that evening, she found Benjamin in his office, staring at a pile of documents. He looked exhausted, his shirt sleeves rolled up and tie loosened. She hesitated at the door before asking, "Are you okay?" He didn't respond immediately. After a long silence, he murmured, "Have you ever trusted someone and deeply regretted it?" Chloe was surprised by the question but answered honestly, "Yes, but sometimes trusting is the only way to find something real." Benjamin looked up at her, as though trying to decipher the meaning behind her words. In the days that followed, the tension between them grew. Alexis continued to appear at corporate events, persistently suggesting that Benjamin reconsider his feelings for her. Although he rejected her, Alexis's cruel insinuations about Chloe began to eat away at him. "Do you really think someone like her can understand the world you live in?" Alexis taunted. Benjamin, impassive, replied, "Chloe understands more than you ever will." Yet he couldn't ignore the social chasm between him and Chloe, something he knew the world around them would never stop pointing out. Meanwhile, Chloe began to question her emotional strength. One evening, returning from the community center, she found Alexis at the apartment entrance. "You should save yourself the humiliation," Alexis said coldly. "Benjamin is a man of power and you, well, you're nobody." The words cut like a knife, but Chloe responded firmly, "I may be nobody to you, but I'm somebody to myself, and that's enough." She walked into the apartment with her head held high, but alone in her room, she couldn't hold back her tears. Chloe realized there was something broken inside her, something she could no longer ignore. She began avoiding Benjamin, believing that perhaps Alexis was right. Maybe she truly didn't belong in his world. Benjamin, on the other hand, noticed her withdrawal and grew restless. One night, finding her in the living room, he finally asked, "What's going on? Why are you avoiding me?" Chloe hesitated but eventually admitted, "I think I'm trying to find my place in something that might never belong to me." Benjamin didn't know how to respond. Days later, as Chloe tried to reorganize her thoughts, an unexpected crisis shook the community center. A surprise inspection revealed serious structural issues, and the authorities threatened to shut it down. Chloe was devastated. The library had become her purpose, and now it felt like everything was falling apart. With no other options, she decided to ask Benjamin for help. He listened attentively to her explanation, but instead of promising an immediate solution, asked, "Why is this so important to you?" Chloe replied, her voice trembling, "Because these kids deserve something I never had. A place where they can dream." The moment struck Benjamin deeply. For the first time, he saw that Chloe wasn't just a woman grappling with insecurities. She was a force transforming lives, including his own. He made a call immediately to address the community center's issues, but also began planning something bigger, something he wasn't ready to share with her yet. Meanwhile, the mystery of Benjamin's safe loomed larger. Chloe still wondered what he kept hidden there, but chose not to press him. One evening, however, while Benjamin was out, she noticed the office door ajar and couldn't resist. Entering the room, she found the safe again, but this time something caught her eye. A key left on the desk. Her heart raced. She picked up the key with trembling hands, but before she could act, she heard the apartment door open. She quickly returned the key and hurried to her room, guilt overwhelming her. When Benjamin came home, he sensed something was off. The office appeared untouched, but there was a subtle change in the air. He knew Chloe was hiding something but chose not to confront her immediately. Instead, he began to question why she was so interested in his secrets. Did she truly want to understand him, or was it just curiosity? In the days that followed, Benjamin started observing Chloe more closely, trying to understand her intentions. To his surprise, he realized that, despite having reasons to distrust him, she had never treated him with anything but sincerity. This disarmed him completely. For the first time in years, Benjamin wondered if he was ready to open his heart, even just a little. The tension between Chloe and Benjamin reached its peak on a quiet night, marked by unspoken emotions and avoided glances. Benjamin, ever calculated, sensed a shift. He knew Chloe had discovered the key to his safe. Though she hadn't acted on it, the mere fact that she had been near his secret unsettled him. She wasn't like the others, manipulative or opportunistic, and that terrified him more than he was willing to admit. While Benjamin remained closed off, Chloe wrestled with her own doubts. She knew their marriage was nothing more than a contract, yet she couldn't ignore the growing affection she felt for him. At the same time, the mystery of the safe consumed her. What could Benjamin be hiding that was so important? Compromising documents, or something more personal? She knew she needed answers but feared confronting him directly. The first major confrontation came at a dinner hosted by one of Benjamin's investors. Alexis, ever present, wasted no time in taunting Chloe. "You know this is temporary, right? Benjamin isn't the kind of man who commits to arrangements." Chloe tried to ignore her words, but when Benjamin failed to defend her, something inside her broke. Later that night, back at the apartment, she confronted him. "Why did you choose me? Was it to humiliate me or just because I was convenient?" Benjamin was taken aback by her outburst, but his response was blunt. "I chose you because I knew you wouldn't betray me." His words, though sincere, left Chloe even more confused. Was that all she was to him? A safe choice? Determined to understand Benjamin once and for all, Chloe decided to open the safe. The next morning, while Benjamin was in a meeting, she used the key she had found. Inside, she discovered something completely unexpected. A collection of old letters, all written by Benjamin's grandmother. One letter contained a clear warning. Asterisk, never let power consume who you are. Love and trust are worth more than all the money in the world. Asterisk. Chloe realized those words had shaped Benjamin in some way, but she also noticed something else. Among the letters was an old photograph of Benjamin with a woman she didn't recognize. His expression was different, lighter, younger. Chloe's curiosity grew, but she knew that delving further without his permission would be a betrayal of trust. She put everything back in place, but the act left her with more questions than answers. That evening, Benjamin noticed something different about Chloe. She seemed distant, as if carrying an invisible weight. During dinner, he finally broke the silence. "You want to know about the safe, don't you?" Chloe hesitated but nodded. Benjamin stood and led her to the office. "I didn't want to share this because it's the only part of me that hasn't been corrupted." He opened the safe and retrieved the letters. "My grandmother was the only person who believed in me. These letters are all I have left of her." Benjamin then shared the story of his grandmother. A strong woman who had raised him to value what truly mattered, but whose untimely death had left him at the mercy of a world where money was the only language that counted. "The photo you saw, it was taken during the last summer I spent with her. Before everything fell apart." Moved, Chloe finally understood the depth of Benjamin's pain. He wasn't just an arrogant, cold man. He was someone who had closed himself off to the world to protect what was left of his humanity. Their moment of connection was interrupted by an urgent phone call. It was Henry, Benjamin's lawyer, with troubling news. Alexis had been involved in an attempt to sabotage his business. She had leaked confidential information to a competitor, jeopardizing not only the company but also the fortune Benjamin needed to preserve his grandmother's legacy. Furious but composed, Benjamin knew he had to handle the situation strategically. Chloe saw this as an opportunity to prove her worth. "Let me help," she said firmly. Benjamin looked at her skeptically, but the determination in her eyes convinced him. Chloe proposed a creative approach. Using the charity event she was organizing for the community center to restore Benjamin's reputation and shift the media's focus. "If you show the world that you're more than just your wealth, no one will believe Alexis's lies." Though reluctant, Benjamin agreed, and the two began working together on the plan. During the preparations, they started to truly know each other. Benjamin discovered Chloe's sharp mind and her remarkable ability to see what others overlooked. Chloe, in turn, saw a more human side of Benjamin. Someone who, despite his cold exterior, was willing to fight for what truly mattered. The night of the event exceeded all expectations. Chloe's speech about the importance of investing in children at the community center moved everyone, including Benjamin, who had never seen her so confident. The real surprise came when Benjamin took the stage and, for the first time, spoke openly about his grandmother's influence and his desire to honor her legacy. His honesty disarmed even his harshest critics, and Alexis, who was present, realized she had lost control of the narrative. Later, as Benjamin and Chloe returned home, he finally lowered his last barrier. "I thought you were just a practical choice," he admitted, "but you're so much more than that. You've reminded me of what truly matters, and I don't want to lose that." Chloe, deeply moved, took his hand genuinely for the first time. "Then don't. Let's play a prank on those who only read the comments. Type glasses in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand." The charity event marked a turning point in Chloe and Benjamin's relationship. For the first time, he openly recognized her worth, and Chloe began to feel she might have found purpose in her new life. However, things were far from perfect. The weeks that followed brought internal and external challenges that would test them once again. Benjamin started spending more time with Chloe, a subtle yet significant gesture. He watched her as she read in the living room or worked on ideas to expand the community center's reach. Chloe, in turn, noticed Benjamin was more willing to open up, though still hesitantly. One quiet afternoon, as they shared coffee on the balcony, he said, almost in a whisper, "The last time someone made me believe I could be more was my grandmother. Until you." Those words deeply moved Chloe, and for the first time, she realized their marriage, once an empty contract, was taking on new meaning. The tension between them finally came to a head one evening when Benjamin came home early to find her barefoot in the living room, wearing a simple dress that unexpectedly accentuated her figure. He approached her slowly, as if trying to make sense of what he was feeling. "You look beautiful," he said, breaking the silence. Chloe smiled, surprised, but before she could respond, Benjamin stepped closer and gently cupped her face. Their first kiss was tentative but full of unspoken emotion. For Chloe, it was an unexpected gesture she had secretly longed for. For Benjamin, it was a leap outside his comfort zone, but he knew he could no longer deny what he felt. In the days that followed, Benjamin invested in building Chloe's confidence. He encouraged her to take better care of herself, not for anyone else but for her own sake. He hired a stylist and hairdresser to help her feel more self-assured. At first, Chloe was hesitant, but when she saw her reflection after her first modern haircut and subtle makeup, she barely recognized the woman staring back. "I didn't know I could look like this," she murmured. Benjamin, seeing her transformation, was speechless. "You've always looked like this," he said. "Now you're just letting yourself see it." Over time, Chloe naturally began to embrace her new confidence. She chose clothes that reflected her personality, not just societal expectations. At social events by Benjamin's side, people began to see her differently. Once a subject of ridicule, she now commanded admiration, not just for her emerging beauty but for the intelligence and poise she exuded. Meanwhile, Benjamin's corporate troubles began to resolve. He exposed Alexis's betrayal and cut her out of his life for good. His business, once at risk, began to rebound, largely due to the calculated decisions he had made in recent months. Yet, despite his professional success, his thoughts were increasingly occupied by Chloe. At a special dinner Benjamin hosted to celebrate the reopening of the community center, Chloe was the star of the evening. Dressed in an elegant blue gown that highlighted her newfound confidence, she captivated everyone with a heartfelt and emotional speech. Watching her on stage, Benjamin felt an overwhelming mix of pride and love, emotions so powerful they nearly disarmed him. Later that night, as they returned home, Benjamin stopped in the hallway, holding Chloe's hands and looking at her with an intensity that took her breath away. "I chose you for the wrong reasons," he admitted. "But today, if I had to choose again, it would be because you're the woman I admire, the woman I want by my side." Chloe couldn't hold back her tears. "I thought I'd never be enough for the world you live in," she said. Benjamin smiled, gently wiping her tears. "You're not enough for my world, Chloe. You are my world." He kissed her again, this time with a passion that left no doubt about his feelings. As their relationship deepened, it became more genuine and profound. Chloe, now confident in who she was, began leading new projects at the community center, earning public recognition. Benjamin, in turn, found in her a balance he never knew he needed. Though their worlds were different, they discovered a way to build something new together. But the past had one final challenge for them. During a family gathering, Benjamin's older brother accused him of dishonoring their grandmother's legacy by marrying someone outside the elite circle. Chloe, overhearing the conversation, surprised everyone by stepping in. "I'm not from this world, and maybe I'll never fully fit into it. But what I've learned from Benjamin is that the true legacy of his grandmother isn't about money. It's about valuing what truly matters." Her declaration silenced everyone, including Benjamin, who had never felt prouder. He realized he hadn't just found a partner. He had found someone who would help him redefine the meaning of family and legacy. That night, as they gazed out over the Manhattan skyline, Chloe asked, "Do you think we still have a lot to learn?" Benjamin smiled, holding her hand. "The only thing I know is that I want to learn everything by your side." The months that followed marked an even greater transformation in Chloe and Benjamin's lives. What had begun as an empty marriage of convenience had blossomed into a relationship filled with love, understanding, and partnership. Chloe had undergone a profound change, not just in her appearance, but in her inner strength and confidence. She had become a commanding presence in social circles and at the community center. No longer just the unlikely wife of Benjamin Harrington, she was admired for her work and her ability to inspire others. Despite the changes, Benjamin felt there was still something missing. He wanted to give Chloe something truly meaningful, a gesture that would show how deeply she had transformed his life. Quietly, he began planning a surprise he hoped would mark the beginning of a new chapter for them. While Benjamin worked in secret, Chloe continued expanding the community center's impact. On a sunny afternoon, she led an outdoor class for the children when a reporter approached her for an interview. "You've become a symbol of resilience and change," the reporter said. "How does it feel to inspire so many people?" Chloe smiled shyly before responding, "I just did what anyone would do if they had the chance to help. I think we all have something beautiful inside us, but sometimes we need someone to help us see it." Meanwhile, Benjamin finalized the details of his surprise. He had decided to completely renovate the community center, turning it into a model institution with a new library dedicated to Chloe. He also planned a special event to renew their wedding vows, this time with real meaning. On the appointed night, Benjamin brought Chloe to the community center without explaining why. When they arrived, she was speechless. The building had been completely transformed, with a new facade, fully equipped rooms, and a modern library bearing her name. At the entrance, a plaque gleamed with the words, ** Chloe Meadows Community Library, a place to dream, *. Tears filled Chloe's eyes. "You did this for me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Benjamin held her hands and smiled. "I did this for us, because you taught me that someone's true legacy is in how they touch others' lives. And you touch lives every day, Chloe." Before she could respond, Benjamin led her inside, where friends, business partners, and children from the community center were waiting. He stepped onto the stage and delivered a speech that left everyone moved. When I met Chloe, I thought I was someone who didn't need anything more. But she showed me that what I really needed wasn't more money, more power, or more success. I needed someone who would challenge me to be better. And she did that without ever asking for anything in return. Tonight, I want to renew my vows to the woman who taught me what it truly means to live. Chloe joined him on stage, her emotions overflowing, and gave a heartfelt response. When I agreed to marry Benjamin, I thought I was accepting just a contract. But what I found was someone who, despite all his walls, had a kind soul and a heart that just needed someone to touch it. You gave me the strength to believe in myself, and today, I believe in us. The highlight of the evening was a dance under the stars, something Benjamin had planned especially for Chloe. He led her across the softly lit floor as music played. "You know you've changed my life forever, don't you?" he murmured as they danced. Chloe smiled and replied, "And you've changed mine." Their kiss was long, passionate, and filled with unspoken promises. Time passed, and Chloe and Benjamin continued to grow together. She became a respected public figure, leading campaigns to promote literacy and education, while Benjamin found a new perspective on his wealth, dedicating part of his resources to social causes. The community center thrived, as did their relationship. One sunny day, as they strolled through the park, Benjamin looked at Chloe and asked, "Do you think we found everything we were looking for?" Chloe took his hand and replied, "Yes. But the best part was realizing it was always inside us. We just needed each other to find it." Chloe and Benjamin's story ended like a modern fairy tale, showing that true love can arise from the most unlikely circumstances, transforming not just lives but hearts as well. And you, from 0 to 10, what rating would you give this story? Would you have accepted this contract marriage under these conditions? Did Chloe make the right choice?